Civil society organisations have been looking for an electoral system that is suitable for South Africa. It's been a while now, but they've held a meeting on Friday to deliberate on the matter. Let's bring in Lawson Naidoo from the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, or CASAC. And Lawson, so under our current electoral system, it's PR, proportional representation. Parliament representatives are accountable to their political parties and not to us as citizens. Is that what is potentially going to change? Is that what should change? What do you think? Morning, Lawson.
Good morning, Gareth. Thank you very much. Well, that is precisely what has to change following a judgment from the Constitutional Court in June of 2020, which declared that the current electoral system is unconstitutional to the extent that it does not permit individuals or independent candidates from contesting elections at a national and provincial election, like they are permitted to do at a local government level. So what the court said is that Parliament needs to amend the Electoral Act to accommodate these individuals or independent candidates. But the important point, Gareth, is that this debate goes back a long, long way beyond or earlier than the judgment of the Constitutional Court. In the interim constitution, the current closed party list PR system was put in place because it was easy and simple in terms of using it to conduct the 1994 elections when we didn't have a voter's roll, and anybody with an ID or other form of recognizable identification could simply turn up at the ballot stations in 1994 and cast their vote. This was only supposed to be in place for the first two elections and to be changed thereafter. Unfortunately, Parliament has ignored the calls from several quarters over the last 20 years or so, including from President Mandela in his closing address to Parliament in 1999, the Van Zyl-Slabbert Task Team in 2003, the Independent Assessment Panel of Parliament in 2009, Kgalema Motlante's high-level panel in 2017, government's own Ministerial Advisory Committee last year, and most recently the Zondo Commission reports, all of which have said that we need to move to some kind of constituency-based electoral model in tandem with the PR list system to ensure general proportionality. Unfortunately, Parliament has not heeded any of those calls, and now government has sought to use the judgment of the Constitutional Court to narrowly amend the Electoral Act merely to comply with the judgment of the court and not really provide a closer link between the electorate and our elected representatives, which is what we believe is required in the current climate in South Africa.
What would that look like, though? I'm not quite following. I understand what you're explaining, but how would this actually look if we went to the polls in 2024? Does that mean essentially anybody who's got some money can put their name down to run for the presidency of the country? Is it as simple as that? Surely that can't be how it works, because everyone would do it.
No, and Gareth, an important point here is this has nothing to do with the manner in which, or changing the manner in which the president is elected. This is not calling for the direct election of the president, which I think has a number of risks attached to it. This is about how we elect our members of parliament.
Okay.
And what essentially is being proposed by a range of civil society organizations is merely that we use the model that is in place already at a local government level, where we vote for ward candidates, and then we have a second ballot where we vote for a proportional representation list system. The simple solution is that we're arguing that that should be replicated at the provincial and national level because voters understand the system. It's simple. It's one we've used for many, many years. And it creates a constituency-based model so that we actually know who our elected representatives are. At the moment, we go to the polls and we put our cross against the name of a political party, and that party determines who their representatives in Parliament are going to be, and those MPs ultimately account to the political parties that put them there and not to the electorate. That is a fundamental flaw in our electoral system, which has been highlighted extensively in the reports of the Zondo Commission, where the Chief Justice, even on Thursday last week, drew attention to the fact that Parliament has done nothing to change its modus operandi to ensure that it holds the executive organs of state to account. Nothing has changed. and nothing will change until at least the electoral system is changed.
Just very briefly, Lawson, before I let you go, because I always like to get timelines as well. What does a timeline look like? Because we've now heard from these various sectors. You've cited all the various committees and even the state capture inquiry as well. When and who needs to change this? What's the next step after you and I finish talking?
Well, the matter is currently before the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs in the National Assembly. Parliament was granted an extension of its deadline to the 10th of December this year to pass the necessary legislation to amend the Electoral Act. It's unlikely that, well, it's more than unlikely, it's impossible, as the IEC explained to the electoral reform in Durban on Friday, for a constituency model to now be put in place ahead of the 2024 elections because there is insufficient time, because constituency boundaries would have to be demarcated, etc. So we are rushing against the clock here, and largely because Parliament and the Minister of Home Affairs have been lethargic in the way that they've approached this task. And it's really now being left to civil society to try and salvage the process and to ensure that we put in place a piece of legislation by December that is constitutionally compliant, allows us to hold lawful elections in 2024, and keeps the debate about electoral reform on the agenda. Because the current bill that is before the House does not meet the constitutional requirements of fairness, of proportionality, and many other flaws. But we need to try and fix some of those flaws so that we can indeed have legislation passed, but still keeping open the option of further meaningful reform to ensure that ultimately it is the voters that are empowered rather than political parties.
Yeah, and 2024 is not far away. I know we say a couple of years, but it'll be here before we know what's happened. Lawson Naidoo, thank you so very much for explaining that to me as well this morning, and all of us keeping an eye on how elections are conducted and the style and the form that they take. Lawson Naidoo from KSAC.